Ellie's journey in Last of Us Part 2 can be described in many ways. Perhaps the most prominent of them is violence. In a devastated world, strength is an attribute of survival after all. In her quest to avenge Joel, she kills at least a few dozen people. All of that only to finally have Abby's life literally in her hands and decide to stop. Many see this as weakness on Ellie's part, or an inconsistency in the writing, but there is more that may explain it better. Ellie's path is deliberate, and her goal is clearly defined. Every twist of fate along the way is either an obstacle or an aid toward a very specific end: to find Joel's killer and avenge the brutal murder she was forced to witness. One of the most impactful moments in video game history. She understands the risks, accepts them, and goes after Abby of her own free will. All this emphasis is necessary to make clear where Ellie's agency lies. Trauma, anger, guilt, and grief wrote her script, or at least its first chapters. These emotions can often lead victims to reflect the behavior of those who hurt them. A retributive mirror, a hasty conclusion about justice. These responses happen so quickly that they resemble emotional spasms. They exert authority over our actions before reason even has a chance to properly weigh them. And this is where self-control emerges as the defining virtue. Determination toward a goal can appear admirable because it means facing adversity and pressing forward. But when that determination comes from an emotional impulse that was never given the chance to be restrained, it becomes the vice of obsession. When aligned with a moral or spiritual commitment, self-control becomes self-mastery. Its virtue comes from the fact that anger is not expected to disappear. What is expected is that well-established, enduring principles already exist, strong enough to prevail over temporary emotions. In Ellie's case, however, even assuming that such self-mastery was firmly established in her, there was something else that justified her actions in her own mind. A sense that there was a debt to be paid, and it waited on Ellie. In her own words, "I don't sleep, I don't eat." This wasn't driven by impulse alone, but whose debt was it really? Despite everything they had been through together, Ellie and Joel's relationship was strained. When she discovered the truth about Salt Lake City, a deterioration began that lasted almost 2 years without the two ever truly reconciling. In a later conversation, she tells him she doesn't know if she could ever forgive him, but she would like to try. But man proposes, God disposes. Joel dies the very next day. Beyond killing him, Abby took from Ellie the chance to discover where that reconciliation might have led. Grief that would already carry anger now carried guilt as well. Among the many things that must have crossed her mind, perhaps Ellie came to believe that she couldn't make things right with him, but maybe she can still make things right for him. We know, however, that Joel never asked for this. All that either we or Ellie could do is speculate. The dead neither confirm nor protest what we do in their memory. The obligation she constructed in Joel's name can be understood as a response to her own guilt. Grief manifests itself in deeply personal ways. In Seattle, the settling of accounts nearly reaches its conclusion. In the first confrontation between the two antagonists, Ellie and Dina come very close to dying. Without Lev's intervention, the story would have ended there. Surviving seemed to open up a new horizon. Dina, without the same bond with Joel and with her eyes more firmly fixed on the present, takes Ellie to live on a farm with baby JJ. An oasis in an apocalyptic desert, a respite many would dream of. But Ellie carries scars, and even the most idyllic present imaginable cannot simply erase them. During the episode in the barn, her trauma is triggered by the sound of a shovel knocked over by a sheep. Even in a safe environment, surrounded by those she loves, she is struck by her own fragility and psychologically relives her greatest suffering. In The Count of Monte Cristo, Alexander Dumas wrote, "Moral wounds have this peculiarity. They conceal themselves, but never close, always painful, always ready to bleed when touched. They remain fresh and open in the heart." Realizing that this wound was still open made Ellie begin to doubt her decision to stop. The revenge that had only been interrupted by failure needed little more than a disturbance. And if, on top of that, someone appeared to remind her of it, those embers could burn again. Sometime after the episode in the barn, Tommy comes to visit Ellie and Dina. He gets straight to the point, telling them that Abby is most likely in California. Before Ellie can even respond, Dina intervenes and says that they are done with that. Ellie apologizes, agrees, but looks conflicted, staring down at the floor. Tommy pushes her and reminds her of her promise. "I'll make her pay." That was all it took. Vulnerable and hearing what her emotional state wanted to hear, she decides to go after Abby once again. There are a few layers here worth our time. The warning and the encouragement arrive in the same person. This pursuit left Tommy with permanent physical injuries, and even his relationship with Maria was affected. All of that without bringing Joel back. He was the voice revenge used to call Ellie once again. But he was also evidence that answering that call came at a high cost. The farm was no guarantee of healing. Even the possibility of it demands time, experience, and new memories, not with the expectation of forgetting, but of learning to cope and having support in moments of weakness. So much had already been lost, and Ellie now had even more to lose: Dina, JJ, and a possible life. This brings to mind the sunk cost fallacy. When something has already cost us so much that abandoning it becomes difficult, precisely because doing so means admitting that all that cost failed to produce the expected result. If you already crossed the line, how many more times must you cross it before you're allowed to stop? Ellie wasn't wrong to realize that she couldn't keep living as she was, but she was wrong to believe that resuming her pursuit was the answer. Neither path could guarantee complete peace, but only one offered comfort in its absence. Here, I need to make it clear that the game didn't manage to make me empathize with Abby either. I recognize the narrative effort, and I understand that she parallels both Joel in protecting Lev at all costs, and Ellie in her motivation for revenge. Still, I won't pretend it worked well. Understanding is not the same as feeling, and this failure to move us becomes most apparent precisely when Ellie spares Abby. Because if Abby and her motivations had been better received, her survival would probably have been easier to accept. Mercy that depends on sympathy for its recipient demands less from the person who shows it. And yet, the story manages to get something right within this failure. Ellie crosses Santa Barbara to find Abby again, but when she finally does, she's faced with someone so broken and humiliated that she almost seems like a different person. Abby is thin, her once powerful arms now atrophied. Her hair has been cut short and left unkempt. She's tied to a post, condemned to die slowly. The vigor of the person who defeated Ellie in that previous encounter bears little resemblance to the broken figure before her now. Each in her own way, they have become shadows cast by the same cycle. In fact, the situation is so unexpected that Ellie's first act upon seeing Abby in this condition is to free her, then watch as Abby unties Lev. Ellie's expression here says a great deal. There is uncertainty on her face, almost as though she were asking herself, is this really the right time? I need to return to Alexander Dumas. In the same chapter where he speaks of those wounds that never close, conveniently for us, he also says this: men who are truly generous are always ready to compassionate when the misfortune of their enemy surpasses the limits of their hatred. It fits just like a glove. The retribution Ellie wanted seemed to be happening on its own, without her intervention, and perhaps in a way that made her react differently than she thought she would. What was even left for Ellie to add to the scene before her? The chronology of the sequence on the beach is strange. Ellie finds Abby dying, saves her, walks with her and Lev to the boat, rekindles her desire for revenge, forces the confrontation, nearly kills her, and stops. Freeing Abby from the post was a preview of what was to come. She was spared before the final fight even began. I think it's time to address the elephant in the room. After a horrendously high body count, with executions of varying degrees of cruelty, is Abby really the person Ellie chooses to show mercy to? While drowning her, did she suddenly convince herself that it was wrong? Or are we supposed to believe that she simply lost her nerve? None of these strike me as the best answer. The only glimpse into her thoughts the game gives us is the image of Joel playing guitar on the porch. There is a succession of events that may help us come close to understanding her motivation. This isn't Ellie's first attempt to find Abby. Her previous attempts ended in failure and nearly got her killed. That changes her perspective, her conviction. Ellie left behind a peaceful, loving, and remarkably comfortable life. That is another weight to carry, the uncertainty of whether that decision was the right one. Ellie found a different Abby, weakened and with death already beckoning. It almost seemed as though she had arrived too late. In the act itself, as Abby's life drains away in her hands, all we see in Ellie's expression is mounting pain and desperation, with no sign that resolution is drawing near. And finally, that image of Joel, alive and peaceful, like one last flash. That was the Joel she wanted to remember, and perhaps only by letting go of revenge could this memory finally take precedence over the other one, Joel bloodied and dying. All of this accelerating and colliding within a matter of seconds could hardly have led her to some conclusion about right and wrong, or even about forgiveness. But it made her simply stop. No absolution, no forgetting. Joel became more than what Abby had done to him. Ellie's apparent mercy does not erase the atrocities committed along the way, nor does it become devoid of value simply because it came late, and neither does it come without consequences. Ellie returns to the farm and finds herself facing the consequences of her choices. The place is empty. Dina and JJ are gone. This is not a punishment for sparing Abby. It seems more like a consequence of having taken too long to do so. Even the guitar can no longer be played as it once was after the loss of 2 fingers. By the end, she is not healed, and yet, even alone and still in pain, perhaps she has finally understood that we do not get to choose every mark the past leaves on us, but we can choose which of them we will continue to give a voice in shaping what is still to come. What do you think of Ellie sparing Abby? Let me know. If you like this, please hit the like button. If you want more, check my other videos and subscribe. There's new content every Wednesday. I'm Charles, and I truly appreciate your time.